gonna tell me how I'm going home.
Welcome to the Real Podcast. My name is Bryce Bingham. Again, I have Dan Wise here with me, one of the owners. We've sold real estate here in the Magic Valley for a long time. I think Dan sold it longer than I've been alive, probably.
I got a commission off the Louisiana purchase.
He did. Anyway, so today we're going to talk a little bit about inspections. They're kind of I would say maybe a necessary evil. I'll just ask you, like, what are your thoughts on inspections themselves? I know that we don't clash, but we don't have the exact same thoughts about
them. So the problem I have with them, and they're great in most circumstances. The problem that I have is when the house is a 60, 70-year-old house, the inspector comes in and they start quoting code for a house built in 2026.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just have to realize what you're buying.
Yeah.
It's an old house, and the inspector's trying to say, that it needs this and this and this to be brought up to modern code. And that's fine. If you want that, go get a new house.
Yeah.
Now, the inspectors will undoubtedly find something wrong with every house.
That's their job.
That's their job. They're gonna find something wrong with every house. One fun story I had a house one time, super clean house. The people were really good on their maintenance. The inspector found where a downspout in a guest bath looked like it would fail. It hadn't failed, but he felt like it might fail. And I said, so if we replace that, and this was the only thing he could find, if we replace that, then this is a perfect house. And his response was, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I was like, that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, you didn't write anything else on the report.
So the inspectors, just by nature, have to find something wrong.
Yeah. And I get it. It's their job, and that's their chosen career path, and that's fine. I know a lot of people struggle with a lot of things that realtors do, and kind of the industry and stuff, and there's certain things that I struggle with too with this industry, but there is certain things that I struggle with inspections, but I have found them to be something that we need to do. I'm going to tell a quick story too, and I feel terrible, and I'll feel terrible to the day I die. Is my son's house. You're a little bit more emotionally attached to your kids, and I was like, hey, let's skip the inspection. We've walked through it really good, and I think that it's fine. You've seen the flaws. And so we ended up not doing an inspection. Then after he bought it, there was a lot of stuff that actually was wrong with the house. Well, they did have, and I think the people were fine. They didn't try and like pull the wool over his eyes or whatever, but there was just certain things that an inspector would have caught, and we didn't catch it. And most of them were actually underneath the house. I'm like, after that experience with your own son, and he ends up having to spend money, or you end up having to spend money or whatever as a dad, it's like, okay, inspections are good. So
yeah, and I mean, sometimes if the market is really competitive, we might make an offer, and it depends on who your buyer is.
Yeah.
If you have somebody who's really handy and they understand what they're getting themselves into, they might make their offer no inspections.
Yeah.
And so sellers love that, and that works out, but it's got to be the right guy.
Yeah.
That knows he's going to have to, do this or that.
And usually when we run into that, it's usually guys that, like you said, have worked in the industry, or sometimes it's guys that are flipping houses.
Yeah, and they're gonna gut it anyway.
Yeah, they're gonna gut it, and plus they know a lot about it, right. So they've crawled under it. They've kind of done their own inspection. So
like on the inspections, a couple ways we handle them is they're going to find 25 things wrong with every house.
Yeah.
And there might actually really be 5 things that are real things. I mean, Some inspectors will list things, and they have to. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's simple things like it might be a light switch cover that's missing.
Yeah.
It's a 50-cent item that's literally takes 30 seconds to fix. So stuff like that, you don't normally fix. But out of these 25 things, there might be 5 things that are real.
Yeah.
And maybe one of them might affect appraisal.
Yeah.
Like say maybe there's chipped and peeling paint or something.
Yeah.
So that's a good chance to get onto that and get that done. But the other 4 items, we might say, look, we acknowledge that these things are broken, and we're just going to reduce the price of the house by $1,000 or something. And that's easier for everybody, but just a little different.
So I have a little bit different thought on that. And that is the fact that sometimes you work with buyers that when they get into that house, they're not going to have a lot of extra money to fix those things. So you lower the price. And
doesn't help them.
Yeah, it doesn't help them other than the fact that in the long run, they're not going to have to pay interest on that extra amount of money. But they still have those broken things because they get in it and, hey, we can't pay for this anyway.
Right.
But so it is, I think it's a good solution, but it's not always the solution.
And sometimes you can buy a home warranty instead of fixing things. There's ways around it, or we just have to get them fixed,
Well, and one of the things you run into in those same situations is the fact that sellers may not have money, or they don't think they have money, and people in the industry that are handymen and stuff may not like me saying this, but there's a lot of people that are willing to get paid at closing. So they'll go and do, if you need even some big items, if you go and do, put a roof on, they're taking a chance, but they'll say, okay, we'll do it. We're going to put the roof on and whatever. And that doesn't always happen, but it's also part of a solution.
And then that invoice is paid at closing.
Yep.
And that works out. So if anybody's short of money. I have a funny story on inspection. I had a guy who bought a house.
He has funny stories about everything.
he bought a house. He broke the Lazy Susan when he moved in. He lived in the house for 18 years and then had to fix it before he moved out.
Oh, yeah. Was that me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. He remembers more about me than I remember about me.
But it's funny to me, though, on these items, a homeowner, all the time, people will not fix something for 20, 30 years, whatever. They'll live with a flaw, and then they have to fix it before they sell it, and they never get to enjoy the Lazy Susan going around in circles.
Yeah, you always have to reach back like it's a regular cupboard.
Yeah, and so do your maintenance.
That's super important.
Keep up on your maintenance, because usually these items that are found on a report are just maintenance items that you knew needed fixed.
Yeah, and we always call them honeydew items or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that we all do it to a point, but in the fact that you might see a year or two before you actually get to it, like some of the trim needs paint or whatever, and you wait a couple of years. But if in that time you decide to sell it, all of a sudden you have to do it.
Right.
And it might not even be because of the inspection. It might be because of the appraisal.
Yeah.
And that's one thing maybe we should hit just a little bit. Jeez, man. Throw crap down. But I do better now than I used to, but I used to struggle so bad to get people to understand that the appraisal and the inspection are two different things.
Right. We always have to school people up on that.
Yeah.
Inspection is important, but appraisal is more important.
Yeah.
Appraisal is what the bank is saying, and the appraisal's an overview of a house.
Yeah.
It's a quick walkthrough. They're not going to look at stuff that the inspector's going to look at. They're going to look at the roof. They're going to look at the siding. They're going to look and see if there's chipped and peeling paint. They're going to turn on the water and the electric and make sure it works. And the foundation. That's pretty much it.
Well, my last close, and they're not going to catch a lot of these things that the inspector does. And they usually don't do it this way. They usually do the inspection and then the appraisal. But I won't go into details, but the last house that I sold they ended up doing the appraisal before the inspection.
Yeah.
And so the appraisal went through, it was fine. And then the inspector went through and there was $20,000 worth of mold. So the appraisers aren't going to find that kind of stuff.
No,
they're going to be like, "Oh, it's fine. Go ahead and buy the house."
Yeah, they're not going to go into the house and look for the mold and stuff.
Yeah, and part of this,
and the appraisal costs twice as much as the inspection.
Yeah. So going to inspections, one thing that we always talk about is inspections they're visual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people won't get that, and that's why they've had to write a lot into our contracts that, hey, this inspection is visual. Dan's going to play on his phone.
I got to text somebody real quick. Keep going.
All right, he's going to text someone right in the middle of our podcast.
I'm always working.
Always working. But anyway, they're visual, and actually, you talk more about that than me. I actually sometimes maybe don't go over the inspection enough with people. But that's one thing they need to know is like, hey, they're gonna look at stuff, but they can't get behind your walls.
Right. It's a visual inspection.
And they can't really move stuff. One of the last closings I had as well, it was that same one actually. So the inspector ended up finding mold in the cupboards, but he found it underneath too. And but he can't really touch anything underneath. So he saw some mold, and we didn't know how bad the mold was until actually an adjuster came over and he actually pushed some stuff around, and I'm like, oh wow, it's a lot worse than we thought. And so that's the thing is I think part of it is people are so sue crazy that the inspectors and anybody else is afraid to touch anything. So they're like, even though all I had to do was push some insulation on the side, he's like, I'm not going to touch it because
right.
Anything I do could screw stuff up. So
and the mold thing, there's mold on this table.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
It's dormant.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's usually not that big a problem. Not like that was.
Yeah, no, it's usually not. I very rarely run into that. I'm going to take your phone away, dude. He's like a little kid, man. He's worse than I am. I won't take his coffee away, though, because he'll just get all frustrated. But anyway, so, the things that they really inspect, I kind of wrote just a list so I wouldn't forget anything. I'm sure there's tons that I didn't write down, but the main things are going to be the roof, the foundation, the plumbing, the insulation, the electrical, and then just the general condition of the house. Mm-hmm. So one thing, you were talking earlier about things that kind of frustrate you about the inspection. I'll mention one thing. One thing is like when they put their personal thoughts into it. And like I had one once and he inspected the house, and this is kind of a sad / funny story, I guess, depends on who you are. But, he had noticed that the stucco was put on wrong. And so he mentioned that the stucco was put on, but he started putting in there like, this is amateurish, this is the worst job I've ever seen and stuff. And that's bad enough. It kind of caused me some frustration. But also he didn't realize that this lady was selling her house and her husband had died. Her husband was the one that had put the stucco on. And so she's going to see, even though she's not the buyer, she's going to see this portion at least of the inspection. And the guy's basically ripping on her dead husband.
Yeah, just the facts. Just stucco needs removed, whatever. Don't throw in the extras.
Well, and a lot of it was the fact that it could cause a problem. It didn't even show that it had caused a problem. And so my thought was like, just put on there, the way the stucco's put on could cause water wicking and to go back behind it or whatever, and just keep your mouth shut on the rest of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds rough, but that's the way it is. So some of my other thoughts of like what I do and don't like on the inspections. One, they can catch stuff and they can save people money in the end, whether the people cancel the contract and it saves them money that way, or whether they're like, okay, we'll buy the house, but we would like this and this fixed,
We used to have this guy. He was an old guy. He's about 80, and he was an inspector. He's really good.
Oh, yeah.
And went to a house one time, and it had been freshly painted, and the buyers were there, and you're kind of doing the whole show. And the inspector comes back in, and he's like, Dan, come out here. I was like, so I went outside. He goes, do you want me to continue this inspection? And I was like, yeah, sure, why? And he takes his finger and just sticks it right through the wall, exterior wall of the house. Boom, just punches his finger right through it.
Yeah.
And I go, no, stop right there.
Yeah.
You know, so we backed out of that deal. And usually an inspector will not charge you for the next one if you cancel one or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was the best. I mean, that house is basically made of sawdust,
Yeah.
painted sawdust.
And I was there. I think you
yeah.
went. Yeah, you went there because it was one you're doing with Jim and Twin.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just like, hey, come and look at this. And we're like, oh wow, like
Yeah, just put his big old finger right through the wall.
Like, yeah. So yep, I remember
And that's what you want an inspector to do.
Yeah,
that's exactly what you want to do. This house is terrible. Bunk.
Yeah.
You know.
But if they do end up doing the whole thing and they write the inspection out, I like them to write it in a way that's factual and not this house is terrible. I like them to say this house has looks like it has a lot of water and termite damage, you know, whatever. Not this house is terrible and you should never buy it and stuff.
Right.
So one other thing that I wanted to mention is like when they go past their scope of knowledge, you know, we'll see that a lot in electrical.
Yeah.
You know, they say this is wrong and this is the electrical code and this is whatever. And then you take an electrician there and they're like, no, that's not code at all. Or they didn't realize that this breaker was set up legal, for this way and stuff. So I think it's okay that they mention like, hey, there's possible double tapping or whatever. You probably should have an electrician come, but don't quote the code and say this is exactly what's wrong and I know it's wrong, because we probably 50 to 70% of the time we get electricians there and they're like not wrong at all.
Right.
So I guess in the end, what hopefully going through the stuff that I've learned and hopefully other people learn is I think inspections overall are good. They're kind of a hassle, but you have to as a real estate agent, you have to be able to explain them right. As a buyer, you have to be able to say, okay, this is an inspection to make sure that we're not buying a house that you can poke your finger through the outside wall.
That was just
yeah. And then as a seller, you know, they may ask for stuff and they may jump out, but really, I mean, those are things that we should know going in, you know. Well, it looks like it's, like I mentioned last time, this is our podcast now.
Oh,
I appreciate you coming, and eventually we'll just change it to Dan and Bryce's podcast. But for right now,
what about Sheldon Cooper's Fun with Flies?
He's going to be stuck on that forever. Anyway, thanks for joining us.